I know I look exhausted and tired, and I am. Oh my goodness. Okay, so Sue had to, not had to, she's such a good woman and a good person and a saint in every sense of the word, visiting the sick and afflicted. Isn't that interesting, that term? Sick and afflicted. It's just an interesting term that we use in the Latter-day Saint lingo. But so she's been doing that. So she gave me the assignment. I'm good at taking assignments from her. A whole big bushel of peaches, getting them ready for the freeze dryer, which I did. I got it all done. So what she told me to do is put them in. I got a big, huge, canning pot, filled it with water, and you get the water heated up. You put the peaches in there for about a minute because they're fairly ripe, and then you take them out of there and put them in a cold bath, which I made in the sink with ice cubes and everything in there. And then it makes the peeling of the peaches fairly easy. And I got our freeze dryer trays out. And as I finished peeling, then I would slice and lay them out there. And I got a whole bushel done. 10 trays. 10 trays are in the freezer now. And I can only do 5 trays at a time. I've already done 1 bushel of peaches before when I was batching it when Sue was in Texas. So the freeze-dried peaches are just so good, and you can either just eat them or you can use them in for pies or cobblers, or just reconstitute them with a little water and have a bowl of peaches. It's really cool. Now, freeze drying, again, nutritional value is maintained high level, way higher than dehydration and or bottling, for that matter. And it's just so much, I wouldn't say easier. And look, I love bottled peaches. I do. I love them. And so I'm hoping that maybe, we can bottle some peaches too, because there's nothing better in the winter, to open up a bottle of peaches and just have 3 or 4 halves, 2 or 3 halves, and tone it down a bit. And I don't know, they just taste good. Sue goes light on the sugar and the syrup, so it's not quite as sugary, which I like. And it's interesting how we morph into each other, because I was probably more of a sugary person and she was less. But as time went on, I assimilated that, where I don't really like it that sweet, what the recipe would call for. So, okay, here's another cool thing I did. Now look, guys, I still feel and am passionate about preparation and food storage and water and all that kind of stuff. And we're always thinking about it. It's not like it's, I guess you could say it perhaps feels like an obsession, but it's really not. It's just kind of cool. Well, elderberries are on right now, and they're kind of hard to find. Mountainous areas. We were fortunate enough where we live to have found, right after we moved here 4 or 5 years ago, to where we're living. Like to keep a little bit of privacy, although most of you know where we live. But anyway, mountain living. We can actually drive to where we discovered some elderberries, and ever since then, we go. Now, elderberry, it's a lot of work, guys. It's kind of like picking pine nuts. I don't know if you've ever done pine nuts, but I have, and quite often. It's been a few years, quite a few years actually, since I've gone out and pick pine nuts on my own. Get the pine cones, and if they're not dried out, it's a sticky business, and your ladders get all sticky. But we used to go out western Utah into Nevada and find the pinyon pines, And you know, the pine nut was really the source of protein for the Native American that lived in that area for years and years and years. And one of my favorite things is to look for flint chippings by the trees there, where we'd get the pine nuts, basically get the pine cones. We'd put them in gunny sacks, bring them home, and either let those dry out and then bang them around and get the shells out, or you just do it by hand. But roasted pine nuts, I'll tell you, bring back fond memories of deer hunts and football games and what have you of pine nuts, roasted pine nuts. Probably one of my favorite treats. I love the taste. I love the smell that it puts through the house as you roast those in the oven. And you don't roast them for very long. And some people bathe them in a brine, and I prefer not. I just like them just roasted. That's how I like them. But anyway, how did I get it? Oh yeah, elderberries. So I either take a pair of like scissors that are kitchen scissors, not that you use for preparing meals. But this time I had just some hand clippers, and I got a big basket full of the little vine kind of thing that they're on, and all these berries. But then you have to pluck them off, and man, it's a lot of work. And I've never freeze dried because we hadn't had a freeze dryer, and we'd always dehydrated the elderberries. The elderberries are great. It's a antioxidant that's probably second to none. And you can make a tea type thing, a drink, or you can do all kinds of things with elderberries. Very good medicinal and good tasting. It's tart, and it's not like boy, I'm gonna have some elderberry drink. It's not like that, but you can tell it's doing good things for the bod, right? So I did that all day, peaches and elderberries, and my back hurts. I'm tired. I'm waiting for Sister P to get home and figure out dinner, because I'm not very good at that. I'll just be honest. I can do breakfast all day long. Lunch, I don't really eat much for lunch. That's just what I found works for me, is maybe have a protein shake, definitely have a cardio miracle. I usually have that around 10. I don't drink it right off the bat in the morning. That's me personally. Go for a big long walk, come back, have a cardio, and then I usually have a protein drink for lunch. This kind that you get at Costco, I like it. It seems pretty good. And then, but come dinner time, I'm starving. Now, when I'm on my own, I can always manage and figure out something, but it's never as good as what Sister P can do. And she did a pork shoulder in the Instapot, the pressure cooker kind of thing, and we still have some pork left. So I was thinking, that with some bread and butter pickles, and she does wheat rolls, whole wheat rolls, where she grinds the wheat and everything, and then she freezes them and heat those up. Maybe make a little sandwich with the bread and butter pickles on. Dang, this is good stuff. I like doing the pork on the Traeger. It takes a long time, and I can't wait. I'm getting ready to get into it. It's kind of hard for me to do that in the heat, and it's been so hot. I was going to say something, but it's been really hot, and I'll grill hamburgers every day of the week. I love hamburgers, and I'll grill a hamburger middle of the winter, middle of the summer. Obviously, it's a great summer food, right? Grilling. But the Traegering thing, for some reason, it's kind of like hunting for me. I'm not in the mood to hunt when it's 190 degrees outside. It just doesn't. I don't even think about it. But as soon as it starts getting a little chilly and frost in the morning, and even though it might warm up a little bit during the day, when that weather changes, my thoughts go to hunting. And I don't do a lot of it because it's so hard to get a tag anymore that's worthwhile. So, but anyway, I still think about it. And as things cool down, I start thinking about smoking some meat. And pork is my favorite to do in the Traeger. I just love it. And I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in anything. In fact, I know just enough to be dangerous. But the cool Traeger that I gave my old one to my son, I got a new one. And it's so awesome because you program it with your phone. And you have to physically be there to turn it on, thank goodness. Otherwise, you could turn it on accidentally, catch your house on fire. But you'll get notifications when it's, put the thermometer in the meat. It'll tell you, and it's. I'm not a tech guy, but this is cool, and it makes it so even guys like me can do a pretty good job at doing some fantastic meat in the Traeger. So my whole point of talking about all this is the first book of Isaiah, or the first chapter in Isaiah. You're probably like, how's he gonna correlate Isaiah with all this food prep and fall? Sue and I were talking the other day. We're the current home we're in. We have gas fireplaces. That's nice. It's great. I'm no complaining. Flip a switch, flame. Oh, it's nice in the winter, right? But I used to really love going out and getting firewood. I'd go out to eastern Utah, out by Duchesne and that area, and either cut cedar or pinyon. And I'd have my chainsaw and my pickup truck and my radio, and that's back in the day. That's when I got hooked to BYU football. That's the only station I could get, and I'd listen to BYU football while I would be out there. And usually I obviously couldn't hear it when I was cutting, but when I was either sharpening the chainsaw or just eating a lunch or something in between cuts, have the game on. And the games were usually during the day, and on a Saturday, that's when I'd go out because that's the only time I could. Otherwise, I was either school or work. Anyway, I miss that, like the idea of winter's coming, we gotta get firewood, we got a bottle, we gotta get things ready for winter. And I think I don't know if it's like inbred in us or it's just how we were raised, and then as soon as the temperature changes, things kind of trigger. I really don't know the science behind it or the spirit even behind it. I just know it's real for me, and it never has stopped happening. Here I am, close to 65, just within a short time period of turning 65, and the fall is my favorite time of year, for a lot of different reasons, but the main thing is just getting ready for winter. There's just something about it. And I think it's like a microcosm of getting ready for the big thing, the Jesus coming. That's how I look at it. There's just things to do. And most of it has to do with the heart, right? Getting ready spiritually. But I do, and I've said this many times, I do think that this connection of temporal or physical preparation, or whatever you want to call it, is so tied into the spiritual aspect of it. And it just, I don't know, there's something, it just makes you feel good. Don't know how else to describe it. It's just that good feeling of, yeah, the shelves are stocked. There's firewood here to get us through the winter. There's this. And, you know, we've never like lived where we had to have that. But I always felt like as a, you know, the man, you know, that's what I needed to do. Anyway, let's get to Isaiah chapter 1. And I'm going to talk about Isaiah chapter 1 and chapter 2. We've all been so excited to get to the Isaiah chapters. We've loved the whole Old Testament. But you know as well as I that we were like, ooh, Isaiah's coming up. And so excited because there's so many messianic implications in Isaiah. Isaiah quoted in the Book of Mormon more than any other. We're commanded by Christ himself to study the words of Isaiah. Isaiah is like, I've made this comparison before. So the prophet, who was the prophet when I went on my mission, who signed my certificate, not my certificate, but my little white handbook, just to show that I'm a minister of the gospel. Maybe it's a certificate, I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about. Was President Kimball. So he was kind of like, he was my go-to prophet. And then later, when I flew home from my mission with Sister Hanson, and she had the window seat, I had the aisle seat, and there was an empty seat in between us. And who should get on the plane on our last leg of our journey home was President Hinckley. Now, he was an apostle at the time, but he gets on the plane, and he had spotted us, and he comes down and he sits in between us, and it was just awesome. We talked, and it was so great. So then he became when he became prophet, I was like, I have a connection to him. Well, this is how I think of Nephi, is Nephi had this connection to Isaiah, because Jeremiah was a contemporary of Nephi, Lehi and Nephi, and probably, I don't know. I'm just kind of assuming that maybe all of his words weren't written down yet, and things hadn't quite developed, because they're living at the same time. And Jeremiah's prophesying that there's going to be destruction. Lehi's prophesying. It says there are other prophets prophesying. So it's hard to know the relationship between Lehi and his family and Jeremiah. But we know that they had a relationship as far as spiritually and connectivity to the prophet Isaiah, because he was the last, they had all of his words. And probably 100 years before Lehi and Nephi did the prophet Isaiah live, and he lived under a few kings. The king I want to focus on just a little bit, just to give a historical background, was King Hezekiah. Now, at this time of Isaiah, the northern kingdom's getting wiped out. The 10 tribes, the tribe of Ephraim, they're getting scattered. Remember the Rehoboam and Jeroboam, and the kingdom split after Solomon, and the southern kingdom, Judah and Benjamin, and the central location was Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, and then the northern kingdom up in Samaria, and maybe you could consider some of Judea, but mostly Samaria. They were obliterated by the Assyrians and taken captive and spread out, and became lost to the covenant, lost in a lot of different ways, but not lost as far as hidden under the earth or something like that, in my opinion. But anyway, so this is the perspective of Isaiah. He is in the southern kingdom, observing what has just happened in the northern kingdom, and he's going, guys, this is going to happen to us. This is going to happen to us. Now, quite often when we refer to Israel, not we, like I'm not, but quite often when the scriptures, let's say that, refer to Israel, they're talking about the northern kingdom. They're talking about the 10 tribes, where Judah, would be the southern kingdom. So when he says Israel, quite often we have to think of, those are the 10 tribes, the northern kingdom. Okay. So Hezekiah now is listening to Isaiah. They're contemporaries. And Hezekiah is a good man. He's a good king. And he sees the connection between obedience and disobedience. And what happens to Israel, or the collective 12 tribes, what will happen if you're not obedient, if you're not willing, and we're going to get into that, willing and obedient. And so he really focuses a lot, not so much, I shouldn't say this way. We read more about his physical preparation. And the Hezekiah's tunnel is one of those things where he wants to prepare the city of Jerusalem temporally. And then we see how these things tie together, where Isaiah is focused on the spiritual aspect. King Hezekiah is focused, it appears to me, more on the temporal and preparing. So the tunnel takes the water from the Gihon spring and channels it into the city. So if there is a siege of the city, they'll have a water source. Water's everything in the Middle East. It's everything out here in the West, right? Water. And this tunnel is incredible. I've been through it twice now, and the engineering is almost unbelievable. It feels like there would have to be some divine intervention. How these mining, I don't know how far down, but just and tunneling so that the water gradually flows. Think of that. And it takes a good 20 minutes to walk through. It's quite a distance. And one group started this way and one group started that way. And they meet within about that much of each other. And then knowing how to have the gravity, have the slight slope for that long of a distance. Are you kidding me? And then it comes out to the pools of Siloam. And where Christ, he knew about the tunnel. The water came out of the tunnel. There are the pools. That's where he tells the guy to go wash the spittle, the mud that was created from spittle from his eyes, and he'd be able to see. You come right out there in those pools. And so I had an interesting experience there with my son Jesse. So we needed a really, we had to do the tunnel quick because I can't remember what our schedule was. I think we had to get up to Galilee. And we had to rent a car and do all that. And so we thought, well, we have a little bit of time. Let's do the Hezekiah's tunnel. So we found a cab driver that we just had to trust, and we put all of our luggage, because we had checked out of our Airbnb in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem, and we thought we were communicating right, that we would come out at the pools after going through Hezekiah's tunnel, and he'd be there waiting for us with our luggage, and then he was going to take us to the rental car place, and so we need somebody to show us around, but also take care of our luggage. Because you got to cram in as much as you possibly can. So we come out of the pool, you walk up these staircase, and we're on a street, and he's not there, and I'm like, dang, this isn't good. and we're thinking, maybe he wouldn't take our luggage. This is nothing there, just some clothes and stuff. So we thought, well, I don't know. But I started thinking, if this somehow feels a little familiar to me around here. And I'd been there one time before with Sue, but with a tour. And when you're with a tour, you don't pay attention. It's unfortunate because sometimes you're in a bus and sometimes you're with people and you're talking and you're not really looking around and observing, right? You're just following the guide kind of thing. But I kind of felt like we were similar. So we walk up and I see Jimmy, and if you've been to Israel or Jerusalem especially, you'll know Jimmy. He has a store where you can buy, the olive wood nativity scenes and statues of Christ and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. Jimmy's a great guy, and he loves the Latter-day Saints, and he caters a lot to the Latter-day Saints. And there's Jimmy's store. We go in, and he recognizes me because Sue had bought this kind of ceramic pomegranate, and we bought some other things from him, and anyway, he took care of us. It was really cool. So Jimmy, he's, oh, your wife's the pomegranate. Yeah. We're talking. I can't believe the guy's amazing to remember that. So we told him our dilemma, and he goes, so do you have the information of the cab driver? And we go, yeah, we got his card right here. But we didn't know, what to do. I think we had a cab number or something like that. So Jimmy knows exactly what to do. Calls, while they're talking. And then Jimmy goes, oh, he'll be right here. He thought you were going to come out at another place, but he'll come right here. And sure enough, he shows up. It's just like you get to Israel and miracles happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen everywhere. Miracles happen everywhere, but there's something special about that place. We had a lot of miracles happen on that trip. Okay, so back to Hezekiah, the tunnel. They've uncovered the wall that he built, the kind of another barrier, a kind of a second wall around the city of Jerusalem, just to protect Jerusalem from attack, because he saw what happened up north. So you have these two. Somebody's doing yard work. I apologize. It's going to be noisy, it sounds like. But you have these two aspects of preparation, the temporal and then the spiritual with Isaiah, of what's going to happen. And then combining that, because there's usually two meanings minimum, and I shouldn't say two meanings, but two applications for these prophecies. And one's currently going on, the current thing, and then the last days. Similar things, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. And I know I'm going to go long on this one, so I apologize. So that's just kind of a backdrop so this would be like 100 years before Lehi, and 100 years before 120 years maybe before the Babylonians actually did come and wipe out Jerusalem, just as because they just couldn't keep the covenant, and so they opened themselves up to not be protected by God, right? Which we ought to look at personally, and so we're gonna do that. Okay, I like verse 2. So Isaiah chapter 1, verse 2. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth. For the Lord hath spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. Doesn't this sound a lot like Jacob chapter 5? And which is the prophet, who is that? Who's the prophet that is quoting? Is it Enoch or Zenos? In Jacob chapter 5. And someday it'll be kind of fun to find out who that is. Zenos. If he was similar, but we know that Jacob also quoted Isaiah. So this nourishing, like nourish the tree, nourish the dung, the roots, and all that kind of stuff. But they have rebelled against me, and we see that in Jacob 5. So this is explaining what Israel is up to. Now, there's so many things we could talk about here, but I'm just going to focus on a couple of things. That has to do with food, right? Okay, it's all about food. Wash you, okay, this is verse 16, still in chapter 1 of Isaiah. Wash you, make you clean, put away the evil of your doings from before mine eyes, and cease to do evil. So we have temple imagery, we have baptismal imagery, we have all kinds of things, repentance, really cool things. Verse 17, learn to do well, seek judgment, relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow. So just some really good basic Christian, I'll say, application to a way of life, right? Come now, and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. Now I love this because this is the process of the atonement. This is the repentance. This is having someone who paid the price so that a mere mortal could repent and be forgiven and someday be in the presence of God because of that. And though your sins are as scarlet, you're stained, it will be like wool. And we're talking about a sheep that is white. Now it's interesting how usually black sheep aren't as desirous because you can't do much with their wool. It is what it is. It's black, right? But with white, it can be all kinds of different colors. But the white is such a cool imagery. I mentioned this before, but shepherds would have a black sheep within their herd so that it made it easier to count. So for every, say, 50 sheep or 100 sheep, you'd have 1 or 2 black sheep. So you'd always just count the black sheep, and then that would give you, okay, so all the black sheep are there, so I'm going to assume that the white ones are there too, right? So that kind of changes the idea of the black sheep in the family, right? Those are the ones you count. Those are the ones you count. Anyway, it's ideal. Okay. So verse 18 is so messianic and prophecy about Christ. It's amazing. But look at verse 19. And there isn't a cross-reference for this, but I found one in the Doctrine and Covenants, and that's why I want to cover this. If ye be willing and obedient, ye shall eat the good of the land. Now we're getting into food. And if you're willing and obedient, you will eat the good of the land. So we're combining repenting with also being blessed with the good of the land, with food, with water, and what the earth can provide. Now, we're not talking about excess. We're not talking about wealth. We're talking about having the goodness of the land and being able to eat of it and partake of it, okay? But it's the willing and obedient. And we just had the verse before that inferred repentance, right? Come now, let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. If ye be willing and obedient, ye shall eat the good of the land. I love that. And then here's the opposite. Verse 20. But if ye refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured with the sword, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. Guys, it's what's happening in northern Israel. And now if you want it in southern Israel, in Jerusalem, this is what's going to happen. That's what he's saying there. Now let's look at a cross-reference that I found And I found this some time ago, but it's in section 64 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Section 64 of the Doctrine and Covenants. I'm going to read verse 33. Section 64, verse 33, and then one more verse after that. Wherefore be not weary in well-doing, for ye are laying the foundation of a great work, and out of small things proceedeth that which is great. And we love that, right? Now listen to this. Behold, the Lord requireth the heart and a willing mind, and the willing and obedient shall eat the good of the land of Zion in these last days. Whew. Okay, so if we want to have food, if we want to have water, if we want to have the basics that will take care of this temporal body, we need to do a couple of things. The Lord requires the heart and the mind. Now, where have we heard that before? The heart and mind, or something similar to that. Let's go to Doctrine and Covenants, section 8. And we don't necessarily think of this, I don't think, in the same terms, but section 8, verse 2. And we know what this is about. This is about Oliver Cowdery wanting to translate. He's like, hey, I want to do it. Yea, behold, I will tell you in your mind and in your heart by the Holy Ghost, which shall come upon you, which shall dwell in your heart. In your heart and in your mind. Here is in your heart and a willing mind. These basically, this is my opinion, what the Lord's talking about are, I want two witnesses. I don't want just one witness. I don't want a temporal witness, and I don't want just a fluffy, say, spiritual witness. I want them both. I want them both. I want two witnesses, a willing mind, or a heart, and I want your heart and a willing mind. And what did it say in section 8? It said, I will tell you in your mind and in your heart. So we need these two witnesses that we're on board, that we're going to be willing and obedient, and we're going to tell them here and here and here. We're just going to do it. And then he'll know, where we stand. But if we come off half-cocked, or if we just want to go, I'm just going to go, pray in the temple all day long, but I'm not going to really, I'm not going to worry about a garden. I'm not going to worry about this, and I'm not going to go serve my neighbor because I'm doing everything, I'm just doing it that. Now look, I'm not talking about people with physical ailments and stuff. So you don't need to write me and say, well, what about so-and-so? I get it. I know that. I'm talking about generally speaking. We can't just and expect without, the work. I'm not fighting. I'm working. Okay. So, okay. So we have to demonstrate these two things. But then we shall eat the good of the land, which is just word for word out of Isaiah. But then the added thing in the Doctrine and Covenants, in these last days. So if we want to be sure of having the things the Lord would want to bless us with, he requireth our heart and a willing mind, and the willing and obedient shall eat the good of the land. And this is all about the children of Israel, which we're a part of. We're part of it. And so our obedience. What does it say in, I think it's section 59. I just thought of this. This is so good. And in nothing doth man offend God, or against none is his wrath kindled, save those who confess not his hand in all things, and obey, or be obedient, obey not his commandments. So you want to upset God? Don't acknowledge him. Don't confess his hand in all things, and don't obey his commandments. Then his wrath is kindled. So the opposite of that is being willing, being obedient. And I think of obedience as not just being a rule keeper, but as President Nielsen said, turning our will over to God, letting God prevail. And because that's the very definition of Israel, is let God prevail. That's when Israel had the wrestle with the Lord, and his hip came dislocated, and he said, "Okay, I give. I'm yours." And then that's when his name was changed from Jacob to Israel. So the very meaning of Israel, at least one of the meanings, is to let God prevail. That's what I think is willing. And so instead of just thinking of checking boxes, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. Well, why are you doing it? That's in here, right? And if it's just to be, to show or just out of duty, you miss out on the joy of the gospel. But if you say, God, I'm yours, do with me what you want, just tell me, then the joy of the obedience comes. Because sometimes we think obedience, I'm going to be obedient, and we get this, and that's not, to me, that's not what the gospel is. So we're looking at the obedience, and then what the Doctrine and Covenants added to that is in these last days. So folks, there's so many reasons to have stress and be, kind of feel this nervousness and all the crazy things going on, which are many. But let's realize that they're prophesied. God still sits on the throne. His son, Jesus Christ, did what he said he was going to do. He conquered death in victory, and he was going to wipe away the tears off all faces. Okay? He's going to do it. And we'll read that in Isaiah later on. So those are the good things. And we're going to look forward to his coming. We're going to look forward to living our lives, not in a bomb shelter, but we're going to be out and about. We're not going to do this and we're not going to do that and be fearful of everything. We're going to now, I shouldn't say we're not going to do this and not going to do that. If you feel like you need to and that's what you want to do, go for it. But if you feel that that's not what you should do, then go forward with faith and be with people and serve people and do all these things. Don't be fearful and do enjoyable things as well. I find the older I get enjoyment out of things that in the past I didn't get enjoyment. I used to hate going to funerals. I just didn't like it. Now I don't mind it. Kind of tired, get to sit there, it's air conditioned, get to hear the word, hopefully, and reflect, pay your respects, think about the person and their life, what influence they had on you and others for good, and it's a good day. Talk to some relatives probably that you haven't seen in a while. When I was younger, and I'll just say it, not that long ago, I was like, man, I've got so much to do, and it's on a Saturday, and oh well, let's go. And I always felt good I went, but you know what I'm saying. Now I'm getting it, and some of this other stuff that I get enjoyment out of now, true joy. Before it was kind of like I have to do it. The temple was one of those for me. For years and years and years, I did it strictly out of duty. Got to go once a month and let's do it. Let's get this done. And I always felt good after. But now it's like, I'm going to learn something today. And you go. Now, I'm not as duty driven as I know a lot of people are. And I shouldn't say it that way. I don't always have the best of. Let me say it this way. I'm a selfish temple goer. I go for insights, and I always get them. I love it. And the side benefit is that I did the work for somebody. And I'm just being honest. I I don't feel a huge, like, oh, I served somebody today. I it's not there yet. And I'm not that person. But what I am is someone that goes and, like, it's pretty easy to generate a name now to go through that's relative. And I know there's been talks given that it's more meaningful if you're blood. But in all honesty, aren't we all blood? And I see these stacks like this of names, that just sit there. I'm like, I'll be more than happy to do a temple name today, And I've even had well-meaning temple workers say, you don't have a name with you today? Nope, I want one of those. Anyway, I digress. I don't even know how I got off on that. So the willing mind and the willing obedient shall eat. And I think that's it. I'm glad it says that, because it's talking about nourishment. And it's talking about nourishment both spiritually and physically or temporally. And if you think otherwise, explain it to me. Explain it to me. Because the good of the land, that's where our food comes from, is the earth. Whether it's meat or vegetables, it came from the earth. All right? And so I love that. Now, I'm going to spend just a little bit on chapter 2. I should spend a lot more on this, but in the interest of time, why we don't read that first verse in chapter 2 is beyond me. And here's where I wanted to get about the dual meaning of a latter day meaning, but then a right then meaning. Or it could even be a third meaning. It could be the meaning of what's going to happen in Israel and what might happen in the New Jerusalem area. Okay? The word of the Lord, the word that Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. It's right there. This specifically isn't about Salt Lake. It could be a second meaning, and we've heard all kinds of church leaders say that this does. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow into it. And we've heard that was the Salt Lake Temple in the Rocky Mountains, right? Even though it's in a valley, you can use that. But it's concerning Judah and Jerusalem specifically. That should be the first thing we look at, and then we can look at types after. This is just my opinion. And many people shall go and say, come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law. And I've heard that explained. I think Joseph Fielding Smith says it, and others, Bruce R. McConkie, that for out of Zion shall go forth the law, New Jerusalem, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. But I think we need to go to that verse 1 and go, no, the first meaning of this is concerning Judah and Jerusalem. This is about the temple in Jerusalem, in my opinion. But I'm open for other. It could have so many different layers and meanings, and I accept the Salt Lake meaning of that too, because there's so many types of. It's so interesting when you go to Israel. You feel like you're in Utah, and vice versa. That's why, we've talked about it. The Chosen, it was great. Go to Goshen, I think it was, the land of Goshen, right? But go to Goshen, Utah, and it looks. The set is there for Israel, but then the mountains and the scenery around. It's like, yeah, this works really good. Anyway. there's so many other really great verses in chapter 2, but that's it. I'm going to end there. But let's look at the first meanings, and then go from there and see where else they apply. All right, that's it. You guys are awesome. Thanks for listening and watching, commenting. You guys are so good. I'm going to talk about the Arza box from the Negev desert region. Mine should be coming soon. If you want a connection with Israel, these Arza boxes are really cool. They're not inexpensive, and not everybody's going to get it. I understand that. I'm just saying if you want. So the code would be Arza Luther Palmer, all together. Arza, A-R-T-Z-A, Luther, L-U-T-H-E-R, Palmer, P-A-L-M-E-R. So if you go to artsabox.com, you look it up, and if you want to order a subscription or if you just want to order one box, it gives you the option. But if you put in that code, you'll get a good discount. So it's just something to do. I'll put if I remember, I probably won't, but if I do, I'll put the link in the comment section. So that's it. It's a lot of fun connecting to Israel, because especially as we're reading Isaiah, because the very next chapter, in fact, look at the heading. I just lost it here, but look at the heading of chapter 3. Judah and Jerusalem shall be punished for their disobedience, and we can liken it. And I don't think chapter 1 is in the Book of Mormon, as I recall, but chapter 2 and 3 are in the Book of Mormon, almost word for word. It's great. All right. God bless. Talk to you soon.